A pond on your plot in just one day. Think it's impossible? I assure you, any gardener can do it. All you need is the desire and a shovel. In this video, I'll tell you a couple of stories about how people organized the construction of a pond on their own plot and created a magnificent ecozone that elite resorts would envy. But that's not all. I've put together a complete guide for you on building a pond at home with your own hands. And all this with minimal costs. Tempting, isn't it? Well, alright, I won't drag it out. Let's get started. The first pond I'll tell you about today was built relatively recently, in 2022. A considerable amount of money and specialists were involved in its construction. So why am I telling you about this pond? It's because to make a simple pond as good as possible, it's important to look at an example of professional execution. I'm sure you'll be able to pick up something useful for yourself. So how did they manage to create such beauty? The work began with digging out the basin. A problem arose immediately during the process. The sandy soil turned out to be too unstable. Without proper reinforcement, the pond could deform and the banks could collapse. To prevent this, sandbags were used to firmly secure the soil and prevent it from shifting. Additionally, the structure was reinforced with reinforced concrete elements, which provided extra strength. The wall on the side of the cellar required special attention. This was where they planned to create a cascade with flowing water. To withstand the loads, a strong L-shaped reinforced concrete wall was erected. After leveling the basin, it was necessary to thoroughly compact the soil. For this, different types of vibratory plates were used. Gasoline-powered ones were used on horizontal surfaces, while an electric one was used on inclined areas because the gasoline engine could stall. Due to oil starvation, this helped prevent soil subsidence and ensured the stability of the structure. The next stage of construction was waterproofing. To prevent the pond from leaking, two types of protection were used. The concrete elements were treated with special penetrating compounds that protect the material from water damage. For the basin itself, a butyl rubber membrane was chosen, a durable and elastic material that holds water excellently. It's important to remember that if using such a membrane, the concrete should not be treated with bitumen, otherwise it simply won't adhere. When the pond basin was completely ready, it was time for decoration. The bottom and the banks were lined with natural stone, which not only gave the pond a natural appearance, but also reinforced the structure. Large boulders were used at the base, the banks were sprinkled with gravel and decorative pebbles, and the cascade was faced with Cosbeck stone. This stone looks impressive and fits perfectly into the pond's composition. To keep the water in the pond clean, a biofilter with a capacity of about 1,500 gallons was installed. It creates a natural filtration system, allowing for the maintenance of water clarity without the use of chemicals. Initially, the pond was left empty, but in the spring, fish were introduced, including sturgeons, crucian carps, perches, and tenches. Additionally, aquatic plants were added to help maintain the biological balance. Many of you might think that building this pond is overly complex and expensive. Yes, it really does seem true. But the point is something else. From now on, you know how professionals build ponds. And if you have gravel, stones, or any other material at your summer house that you haven't thought about using, you now have a detailed guide for construction. Imagine a typical summer house plot, a shovel, some building materials, and a great desire to create a real pond with your own hands. That's exactly how the story of this young man began. It all started with a simple idea to dig a hole and fill it with water. But then nature made its own adjustments. After 2 years of inactivity, the banks crumbled and became more sloped. It was necessary to refine the shape again, make steps, and level the edges. It was especially challenging in the area near the neighbor's fence. Here, it was necessary to manually raise the ground level to reinforce the structure. Once the shape of the basin was finally perfected, waterproofing needed to be ensured. Old linoleum was laid on the bottom, a simple but effective barrier that would prevent accidental punctures from stones, nails, and other debris. Then the main waterproofing material was laid on top. There were some minor flaws. In a couple of places, the film didn't completely cover the ground, but it wasn't critical. The water will still cover the exposed areas, and stones will secure everything on top. It was decided to fill the pond with water from the well. Moisture from the roof and the entire area drains into it, so the supply was sufficient. The system is simple, a pump, a hose, and the water, slowly but surely fills the pond. After just 4 days, the level rose to the first step. The next step is decoration. Stones were laid to secure the banks. Ordinary sandstone, collected nearby, was used. There aren't many stones yet, but gradually there will be more. Each new element will give the pond even more naturalness. And to make the pond look complete, gravel was added. A few bags of multicolored and thoroughly washed gravel, and the bottom immediately came alive with new shades. Now we just have to wait for the rains, which will fill the pond to the desired level. And in the future, water from the house roof will be directed here. A drainage pipe has already been prepared for this. Thus, step by step, this simple country plot has turned into a place where you can admire the water surface, relax by the shore, and enjoy the natural atmosphere. And most importantly, everything was done by hand with heart and inspiration. So, dear viewers, I have told and shown you how professionals and self-taught individuals make ponds. Both camps have their own tricks and secrets. I want you to be able to build a pond at home by yourself too. After all, it really isn't difficult. That's why I have put together a guide for you on building a pond at home with your own hands. Before picking up a shovel, it's important to choose the right location for your future pond. This is the key to its longevity and cleanliness. The ideal spot is a sunny area, but you must not allow the pond to be under scorching rays all day long. A little shade from nearby bushes or structures won't hurt the water. This way, it won't overheat and algae won't bloom. However, it's still better to stay away from large trees. Their roots can damage the bottom, and in the fall, leaves will constantly fall into the pond. This won't benefit the appearance of the water body. Now, let's decide on the size. A small decorative pond up to 3 feet deep is suitable for water lilies and small wildlife. A medium pond up to 5 feet can already be made with several levels, and more plants can be planted on its steps. And if you want to have fish, the pond should be at least 7 feet deep. If it's made smaller, the pond might freeze through in winter. Once the location is chosen and the size is determined, it's time to mark the outline. This can be done with a rope, a garden hose, or simply by drawing the outline on the ground with paint. It's important to immediately envision the future water body, where there will be gentle slopes and where the shelves for plants will be. Let's move on to the tools. We will need a shovel, and if the pond is larger than 7 feet, it's better to rent a mini excavator. Otherwise, you'll get tired swinging the shovel. Be sure to purchase a building level to control the quality and evenness of the banks. Stock up on geotextile and waterproofing film. Without them, the water will simply seep into the soil. For decoration, you'll need stones and gravel. It's also highly recommended to have a pump with a filter. With it, the water in the pond will be significantly cleaner. If you don't have experience in planning the construction of such structures, you can consult specialists in construction and arrangement. My advice for you in such a situation is to consider a production association system. This is a leading company offering a full range of services from designing modular buildings and houses of various purposes and any complexity, to developing design projects, including interior finishing. The team guarantees the quality of their work, which is very important in our time. So, if you're racking your brain over how to integrate your pond into the space of your country house plot, contact the production association system. They won't let you down. After planning, you can proceed to the most complex and labor-intensive process, the earthworks. It is at this stage that the shape of the future pond is laid out. The quality of the work determines the strength and durability of the pond. The first step is soil excavation. If the pond is small, you can manage with a regular shovel. The main thing is not to dig straight down vertically, but to form gentle slopes so that the banks do not collapse. If the pond is planned to be deeper, rent a mini excavator. I've mentioned this before. When digging, it's important to consider the levels. The bottom of the pond should not be flat. It's better to create several steps. These steps are also called terraces. The top shelf will be useful for planting marsh plants, the next one for deeper water plants. And the central part, the deepest, will become a withering pit for fish if you plan to have them. To be continued. After the pit is dug, we move on to leveling. The edges of the pond should be even, without sharp height differences. A construction level will be useful here. If there are noticeable sharp protrusions or overly steep slopes, it's better to correct them right away. Otherwise, the banks may collapse over time. Another important point. Be sure to remove all sharp objects from the pit. Stones, tree roots, hard clumps of soil. All of this can damage the waterproofing. Therefore, thoroughly go over the bottom and walls of the pond. Remove anything that could become a problem. For additional protection, you can lay a layer of sand on the bottom about 2 to 4 inches thick. After this, it is advisable to compact the surface. This can be done with your feet, a wooden board, or even a small vibrating plate. The denser the soil is laid, the less risk there is of settling and erosion of the banks in the future. At this stage, the pit is ready. Now it resembles the outline of the future body of water. But for now, it's just a hole. Next, we have the most interesting part ahead. To turn our pit into a real pond, proper waterproofing is necessary. This stage is the most crucial. The quality of the work determines how long the pond will last, whether it will lose water, and if it will maintain its shape. In general, it's important not to make even the slightest mistake here. There are several methods of waterproofing. If you have clay soil, you can compact it to create a natural lining. But a more reliable option is to use a special pond liner. Regular polyethylene won't work. It's too thin and will tear quickly. The ideal choice is a butyl rubber liner or a geomembrane. They are strong, flexible, and withstand winter frosts. Before laying the liner, it's important to prepare the substrate. You can spread a layer of sand on the bottom or lay down old carpet, geotextile, or even pieces of linoleum. This will protect the insulation from punctures by stones or plant roots. After that, the liner is rolled out over the entire pit and the folds are carefully smoothed out. It should fit snugly against the bottom and walls. The edges of the liner are secured outside with stones or covered with soil, leaving an allowance of 8 to 11 inches in case of settling. Now the moment you've been waiting for has arrived. Filling with water. It's better to start slowly, gradually smoothing out the insulation so that it lays as evenly as possible. Water can be drawn from a well, the central water supply, or a rainwater system. If time allows, you can wait for rain, which will help save money. But that's only if you're a very patient person. While the water is being filled, you can work on decorating the banks. You can lay stones along the edge, secure the waterproofing, and plant other decorative elements. This will give the pond a natural look and help hide technical details. Well, the water is gradually filling the pond and reflecting the sky. After some time, what you have before you is no longer just a hole, but a real oasis. But it's too early to relax. The final stage remains. Well, it's time to turn your newly created pond into a real living corner. Let's start the process with decorating using inanimate objects. Rocks are not just decoration, but also an important protective element. They hide the edges of the waterproofing, prevent damage to it, and give the pond a more natural appearance. It's best to use natural materials like sandstone, pebbles, and boulders. They can be scattered randomly around the edges of the pond, thus creating the effect of a natural body of water. Now it's time to add some vegetation. It will not only decorate the pond but also help maintain balance in the ecosystem. In the coastal zone, cattails, reeds, irises, or sweet flags will thrive. And you can plant water lilies directly in the water, or duckweed. They will create shade and protect the water from overheating, as well as help reduce algae growth. Don't forget about the more mobile inhabitants. If you want to enliven the pond, you can introduce snails, crayfish, and invertebrates. They will help keep the water clean. And if you plan to introduce fish, it's better to choose hardy species. For example, crucian carp or goldfish are excellent choices. The main thing is not to overcrowd the pond. Otherwise, the water will start to become cloudy quickly. The final touch for creating a relaxing atmosphere. A small bridge, a garden bench, or a lantern by the water will turn the pond into an ideal place for relaxation. And if you add a small fountain or waterfall, the sound of trickling water will enhance your space. Even cozier. But that's optional. And now the pond is ready. Now it lives its own life. In summer it will delight you with coolness and singing frogs. In the fall, it will reflect the crimson leaves. And in the winter, it will be covered with a lace-like layer of ice. You have created not just a body of water, but you have brought the space to life, giving it a soul. You can even be proud of this. I really hope that my guide will be useful to you, dear viewers. If you are unsure whether to start building a pond, you definitely should. It is a very simple project to execute, which can bring many benefits to your space. Coolness, a pleasant atmosphere, fishing. At any time, a pond on your property can provide all of this. It is important to remember that a pond is not just a decorative element, but a whole ecosystem. To be continued. It requires maintenance, but in return, it rewards you with its clean and clear water. Very soon, insects will settle here, birds will come to drink water, and if you introduce fish, you can watch their smooth movements creating harmony. In this small aquatic world, as you can see, creating a pond with your own hands, it's not as difficult as it seems. The main thing is a little patience, desire, and the right approach. I hope this guide has inspired you to conduct your own experiments. So grab a shovel, build, create. Let your plot come alive with new colors, and if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, like, and share your experiences in the comments. I'm sure you'll do just as well.